On a foggy afternoon in 1977, the unthinkable happened. Two Boeing 747s, the largest commercial aircraft of their time, collided on the same runway. The result? The deadliest aviation disaster in history. Over 580 people lost their lives in a matter of seconds. But what led to this catastrophic event? How could two massive planes end up on a collision course at the same airport? Today, we dive deep into the Tenerife airport disaster, uncovering the events that led to one of the most tragic days in aviation history. It was March 27, 1977, a seemingly ordinary day at Los Rodeos Airport in Tenerife, one of the Canary Islands. But chaos was brewing. Due to a terrorist bombing at nearby Gran Canaria Airport, several planes had been diverted to Los Rodeos. Among them were two Boeing 747s, one operated by KLM and the other by Pan Am. Los Rodeos wasn't designed to handle such a large influx of aircraft. The airport had only one runway and a single taxiway. The diverted planes crowded the small airport, with some even parked on the taxiway, forcing other planes to use the runway itself to taxi, a risky procedure even under normal conditions. And to make matters worse, the airport was shrouded in dense fog, reducing visibility to almost zero. But the stage was already set for disaster. The KLM 747, commanded by an experienced captain, was preparing for departure. On board were over 200 passengers, eager to finally take off after hours of delays. The captain, one of the airline's most senior pilots, was eager to get in the air. But impatience would soon play a deadly role. The Pan Am 747, carrying over 300 passengers, was still on the runway, attempting to taxi to its assigned takeoff point. The fog made communication between the control tower and the pilots difficult, and the air traffic controllers, dealing with multiple aircraft, were under immense pressure. Now, imagine this scenario. Two massive 747s, each weighing hundreds of tons, one trying to take off, and the other unknowingly taxiing on the same runway, with no way of seeing each other through the thick fog. This is where the fatal series of misunderstandings began. At 5:06 p.m., the KLM captain, believing he had clearance for takeoff, started accelerating down the runway. But in reality, the Pan Am flight was still taxiing on the same stretch of tarmac, obscured by fog. The Pan Am crew, hearing the KLM's engines roar to life, quickly realized the danger. They frantically radioed the tower, trying to warn them that they were still on the runway. But it was too late. Just as the KLM plane reached takeoff speed, the Pan Am 747 came into view. The Pan Am captain tried desperately to swerve off the runway, but with a plane of that size, it was impossible to move fast enough. At the same time, the KLM pilot, seeing the Pan Am plane directly in front of him, tried to lift off prematurely, pulling the nose of the aircraft into the air. But the KLM plane's tail struck the Pan Am jet, slicing through the upper fuselage. The impact caused a massive explosion, engulfing both planes in flames. The collision was devastating. The KLM plane never made it off the ground, and both aircraft were completely destroyed in the fire that followed. In a matter of seconds, hundreds of lives were lost. All 248 passengers and crew aboard the KLM flight perished. On the Pan Am flight, there were 335 people on board, and miraculously, 61 of them survived, but many of those were severely injured. The scene was one of utter horror and destruction. But how did it happen? How could such a catastrophic event occur at a major airport? The investigation that followed revealed a series of deadly errors. The first issue was communication. In the chaotic moments leading up to the crash, both crews and air traffic control misinterpreted critical instructions. The KLM captain mistakenly believed he had been cleared for takeoff, when in reality, he had only been told to stand by. Meanwhile, the Pan Am crew was struggling to follow taxi instructions in the low-visibility fog. The language used between the pilots and air traffic control wasn't clear or direct enough. A single word, takeoff, was misunderstood, and that misunderstanding cost hundreds of lives. Second, impatience played a deadly role. The KLM captain, eager to depart after hours of delays, didn't wait for final confirmation from air traffic control before accelerating. He trusted his instincts and experience instead of waiting for the all-clear. It's a stark reminder that even the most experienced professionals can make fatal mistakes under pressure. Third, the weather conditions were a key factor. The thick fog that covered the runway made visual communication between the planes and the control tower impossible. Neither the KLM nor Pan AM crews could see each other, and the air traffic controllers had no radar to track the aircraft on the ground. This lack of visibility was a crucial element in the disaster. In the aftermath, the Tenerife disaster led to major changes in aviation safety. One of the most important outcomes was the overhaul of cockpit communication protocols. Pilots and air traffic controllers are now required to use standard, unambiguous language to avoid misunderstandings. The term takeoff, for example, is only used when the plane is actually cleared to leave the ground. Additionally, the accident highlighted the importance of proper crew resource management, or CRM. Pilots are now trained to work together as a team, questioning each other's decisions if necessary. In the KLM cockpit, it's believed that the first officer may have doubted the captain's decision to take off but didn't speak up strongly enough to stop it. CRM training now encourages open communication and collaboration between all members of the flight crew, regardless of rank. And finally, the disaster underscored the need for better ground radar systems at airports, particularly those prone to low visibility. Today, most major airports are equipped with advanced radar that tracks aircraft on the ground, helping air traffic controllers manage taxiing planes even in poor weather conditions. The Tenerife disaster remains the deadliest aviation accident in history. It's a somber reminder of how small mistakes can lead to unthinkable tragedy. In this case, a combination of miscommunication, impatience, and bad weather created a perfect storm of disaster. But from that tragedy came important lessons that continue to make air travel safer for all of us. As we remember the victims of this horrific event, it's important to reflect on the advancements in aviation safety that were born out of the lessons learned that day. Air travel remains one of the safest modes of transportation, thanks to the protocols and technology developed in response to disasters like this one. Stay tuned to Skyline Soarers for more stories of aviation history, the lessons learned from past mistakes, and the advances that make flying safer today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth looks at the fascinating world of aviation.